Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Koopa Fantasy. I am of course Koopa Fantasy. You can find my blog online at koopafantasy.com. That's Koopa fantasy.com. Like, subscribe my videos, share them, show them to my friends, stuff like that. It all helps me. And finally on Twitter at @Blackie_Mike. That's probably the thing that helps me the most. Ask me questions on there. Retweet my stuff because that's always freaking awesome. And anything to help me out, guys, I appreciate it because I'm just some lowly college kid making some videos about fantasy football. And let's get into it. Week 7 Sim Stardom for the 2012-2013 fantasy football season. My first up at QB is Josh Freeman. He's coming off a 3-touchdown game. He's got a great chance at another one this weekend when the Bucs play host the Saints. The Saints are one of the best matchups in fantasy when it comes to basically almost any position, running backs, wide receivers, quarterbacks. They all tend to have a good production against the Saints, some high-scoring games. So Freeman's got a good chance at another 20-plus fantasy points this week. And then definitely a bit lower in the start category, but we still have him, is Matt Hasselbeck. He's taking on Buffalo. Buffalo was, I guess, a little stingy at Arizona last week, but Matt Hasselbeck still has the chance to maybe throw for 250 and 2 TDs, something like that. Maybe get you 15 to 18 points, I'm thinking. Obviously, it could be worse, but it could be better than Matt Hasselbeck. And also, Kenny Britt's looking a bit better, so you could see Matt Hasselbeck hook up with Kenny Britt once or twice for a touchdown, and that would be very nice against a Buffalo team that has been struggling of late, despite the win over Arizona. And then at running back, we got Felix Jones for Dallas taking on Carolina. This guy is easily probably the pickup for the week among running backs at least. Right now, DeMarco Murray's injured, not going to be playing week 7, so that means Felix Jones is getting the starting role. He had 90 yards against the Ravens without getting the start, so it shows you what he can do against Carolina, although with Felix Jones, there's never really any guarantees. And the last running back is Montario Hardesty, another RB who could benefit from a guy having an injury. And the usual starter having an injury. Trent Richardson is probably going to be out week 7. I shouldn't say probably. He might be out for week 7, or should at the very least be limited in his role. Hardesty had 56 yards and a TD with Richardson out last week in week 6. So he showed fantasy owners or anybody who wanted to potentially pick him up what he's capable of if he gets the carries. And the matchup against the Colts is also a great one for him. The Colts are allowing tons of rush yards. They've got a pretty stingy secondary. And then on to the wide receivers, Mike Williams for taking on New Orleans, another Tampa Bay guy. You got Josh Freeman. He's going to throw some TDs. Vincent Jackson, obviously, is going to be a guy to start. But Mike Williams I considered putting him on my start list last week, and I apparently should have because he showed up with a bunch of yards and a TD. So I'm going to throw him in this week because he's got an even better matchup. I'm looking for another 80, 90 yards and a TD from Mike Williams. And then Stephen Hill for the Jets versus New England. With Antonio Hill is the top wide receiver for the Jets. He saw less targets than Curley last week, but he was able to do more with them. I'm pretty sure he actually caught all 3 of his targets, including a 5-yard touchdown. So if the Jets are playing from behind, which they're probably going to be doing against the Patriots, look for Stephen Hill to maybe snag a garbage touchdown, possibly even 2. And then Brandon Gibson, St. Louis versus Green Bay. The Rams, they can surprise you at times. They sometimes play over their heads and play good against good teams. Maybe it's just good teams playing down to the competition. Who knows? But I'm pretty sure that they're going to get stomped in this one, and it's going to result in Sam Bradford throwing like 35, 40, maybe even more passes. Rodgers looked elite last week against the Texans, stomping them. So Sam Bradford is going to be in tough and probably going to have to throw for some yardage. So Brandon Gibson's got a chance to be the recipient of all that. And then at tight end, Jared Cook. I had Matt Hasselbeck in there, so I'm thinking that Jared Cook might be able to have a good game. Tight ends haven't been doing a whole lot. I know I have Antonio Gates. He finally just busted out of his shell. Gronk and Hernandez aren't doing anything. Hernandez due to the injury. The tight end position really isn't doing a whole lot this year, and I'm looking for Jared Cook to potentially have a big game, maybe 70, 80 yards and a touchdown versus Buffalo. On to the sit-em side of things, Matt Schaub versus Baltimore. The Ravens defense took some big hits in week 6, so you would think that Schaub might get a boost going against them. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be Aaron Foster who reaps the benefits in week 7. Foster was still able to run for 2 TDs against the Packers despite getting trashed in that game. You'd think it'd be a lot more throwing, but it was Aaron Foster who went with all those fantasy points. And against Baltimore, who has really struggled against the run this year, just look at what DeMarco Murray and Felix Jones did last week. It's looking like it's going to be all Aaron Foster and not a lot of Matt Schaub against Baltimore. And then Minnesota, Christian Ponder. Ponder helped fantasy owners cash in last week, but it took 52 pass attempts in order to do so. So I don't see Ponder even getting close to that this week against the Cardinals. He should be closer to like 30, 35, which is kind of the range he's been in for most of his starts this season. So I'm not looking for a whole lot from Christian Ponder this week again. Marshawn Lynch, this guy is a stud. There's tons of buys. There's some injuries, so I know obviously if you're desperate, you're not sitting Marshawn Lynch. But if you've got some running back depth, this guy has got a pretty tough matchup. Although he was able to overcome the odds in 2011 in this matchup against San Fran, I'm pretty sure he was the only running back the whole year for over 100 yards and a TD against them. But this time around, the Seahawks are on the road going into the 49ers. I'm actually not sure what the last game was, whether it was home or on the road. But this game is in San Fran. San Fran's coming off a big loss to the Giants. I'm pretty sure that Harbaugh is going to have them ready for a big game against the Seahawks. This game looks primed to be like a 13-10 game. I'm not sure if Marshawn Lynch is the guy who gets that touchdown. Mike Ellisor, a Detroit running back going against Chicago. Obviously, that's a tough matchup. Mike Ellisor I'm pretty sure this guy's going to be paying dividends for guys who keep him and have stashed him throughout the year, but not last week and not this week. Obviously, he was stuffed by Minnesota a couple weeks ago. And then last week against the Eagles, he actually had a pretty good yards per carry with his 15 carries against the Eagles, but didn't have a touchdown or anything. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't get a touchdown on the road against the Bears. So you might be looking to pass on Mike Ellisor this week. And also, LeGarrette Blount had a bunch of garbage yards and a TD last week. Don't expect that from him this week against New Orleans. I know there's lots of fantasy potential here for almost any player, as I said earlier, with the other Tampa Bay players, but I think it's going to be all Doug Martin here through the first 3 quarters. And then LeGarrette Blount, if he sees any action, it's not going to be enough to give him a fantasy day, if you ask me. And then for wide receivers, Brandon Lloyd. This guy's got the talent to have a good game against the Jets team, especially without Darrelle Revis there to play. But he might not have the opportunity to do so. The Jets are struggling to stop the run this year, and we've already seen big games from guys like Stephen Ridley, Brandon Bolden. We've seen a little bit from Stephen Vereen. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot of the Patriots running backs in this game instead of a whole lot of Tom Brady and guys like Brandon Lloyd. And then as well, another stud you might want to consider sitting is Steve Smith. This might come as no surprise. I considered putting Cam on this list due to the matchup against the Cowboys, top-ranked defense in the pass. But in the end, I decided against it since he's capable of using his legs. But in the end, you still have to consider sitting Smith, who hasn't had a double-digit fantasy points since week 2. He had back-to-back 100-yard games to start the season. But after that, he hasn't cracked 100, and he still doesn't have a TD yet this year. So you might want to consider sitting Steve Smith against Dallas. And then Oakland, Denarius Moore vs. Jacksonville. The odds were against him last week. Denarius Moore, that is, but he still came through against the Falcons and scored a TD, one of the few wide receivers to do so this year. But he's going to be in tough again in Week 7 to score another touchdown. The Jaguars are routinely a team that gets ran all over, and I think that it's going to be the Darren McFadden kind of coming out party this year since he hasn't really had a huge game, so to speak. So I don't think you see a lot of Palmer or Denarius Moore this week. It's going to be a lot of Darren McFadden. Alright guys, that is it for my Week 7 Sit-'em Start-'em video. I hope you liked it. I hope this stuff helps you, and I hope it does not steer you wrong. Of course, this is fantasy football. Anything can happen. But obviously, I hope you guys win. Hope you guys some victories. I am doing so in my leagues right now. I got a couple leagues where I'm like 4-2. I got one where I'm 5-1. I got a couple where I'm 2-3. It's kind of all over the board. Doing my best here, guys. I hope it's helping you out. Obviously, back to the beginning, follow me on Twitter, @Blackie_Mike. Check out my blog online, koopafantasy.com, KOOPPA, and like and subscribe to my videos, because that stuff always helps, guys. Koopa Fantasy, signing out. Peace.